The day you were supposed to leave, the first time I heard it, I laughed. It was a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. No name, no greeting. Just a calm, tired voice saying, "Hi, this is a courtesy call to confirm your departure. You were scheduled to leave on Monday. You didn't. Please contact us to avoid complications." I deleted it. Spam. Scam. Wrong number. I would have forgotten it completely if it hadn't have been for what happened the next morning. I walked into the lobby of my apartment building and found my name covered, not removed. Not erased. Covered. A small strip of masking tape had been placed neatly over the plaque beside my mailbox. Someone had written 2 words on it in black marker. Left already. I stood there for a long time, keys in my hand, as if staring hard enough would turn it into a joke. The rest of the mailboxes were normal, names printed, stickers peeling at the edges. Only mine was labeled like a mistake that had been corrected. I ripped the tape off. Underneath, my name was still there, shiny and intact. I told myself it was a prank. Some bored neighbor. A stupid coincidence. But my chest felt tight in a way I couldn't explain. Upstairs, I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages. Then, a notification popped up from my calendar. Departure 9 a.m. I didn't remember creating that event. It was set for yesterday. I opened the details. No location, no notes, no invitees. Just a title, and a reminder that had triggered while I was asleep. Departure. I stared at it, then deleted it, annoyed at myself for feeling unsettled. I went to work. On the subway, I noticed people kept glancing at me and then looking away too quickly. It wasn't the usual casual observation. It was the quick, startled look you give someone you think you recognize from somewhere you shouldn't. When I got off at my stop, a man standing near the escalator watched me as I passed. He frowned as if confused. Then he whispered, not to me but to himself, "No, that's not possible." I kept walking. At the office entrance, my keycard didn't work. I tried again. Red light. Again. Red. The security guard behind the desk looked up. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I work here," I said, forcing a casual tone. "My badge isn't scanning." He leaned forward and squinted at the card in my hand like it was counterfeit. "What's your name?" he asked. I told him. He typed something into his computer. His brow furrowed. Then he shook his head slowly. "I'm sorry," he said. "That name isn't on the active list." I felt heat rise in my face. "That's ridiculous," I said. "I've worked here for 3 years. He looked at me again, more carefully this time, as if trying to reconcile my voice with the information on his screen. "Maybe you're in a different building," he suggested. "No," I snapped. "I'm in the right place. Call my supervisor." He hesitated, then picked up the phone. After a moment, he held it out. "They'll talk to you," he said. I took the receiver. "Hello?" I said. A pause. Then a woman's voice, strained and uncertain. "Who is this?" she asked. "It's me," I said. "I'm downstairs." "Security says my badge isn't working." Another pause, longer this time. Then, very quietly, "That's not funny." "I'm not joking," I said, and my voice cracked slightly. The woman took a shaky breath. "You can't be there," she whispered. "What do you mean I can't be?" "You left," she said. "You left last month." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible," I said. "I've been here." "I came to work yesterday." "No," she said, firmer now, as if saying it out loud made it real. "You were on the list. Your exit interview was processed. You cleared your desk. You said you were finally going to do it. You said you were done waiting." My grip tightened on the phone. "You're confusing me with someone else," I said. "I'm not," she replied. We all watched you leave. We had cake." The word cake felt obscene in my mouth, like something too normal to exist next to what I was hearing. "That didn't happen," I said, but my certainty was thinning. The woman's voice softened. "Are you okay?" she asked. I hung up. I returned the receiver to the guard, who was watching me with growing concern. I stepped backward, away from the desk, away from the building, as if the whole place had suddenly become unstable. Outside, the city looked the same. Cars moved. People walked. A dog barked at a pigeon, normal. except for the sensation crawling under my skin that I was the one thing that didn't belong. I went home early. On the way, I checked my bank account, half expecting it to be empty, like my job. But the numbers were there. My transactions, my rent payment, my grocery orders. Then I noticed something strange. A charge from a train station. 1 month ago. Ticket one way. I stared at it until my eyes burned. I didn't remember buying it. I didn't remember taking any train. And yet, there it was, like the world had kept a receipt. When I reached my building, my key didn't work. That was when I felt real fear. I tried again. The lock didn't turn. I stepped back and stared at the door like it was playing a trick. A woman came out of the lobby carrying a bag of groceries. She didn't glance at me until she was right beside me, and when she did, she froze. Her face went pale. "Oh," she whispered. I swallowed. "Hi," I said. "Sorry my key isn't working." "Can you—" Her eyes darted to the hallway behind her, then back to me. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. My heart hammered. "What?" She stepped backward as if I smelled like smoke. "You left," she said. "Your apartment's empty." "I live here," I said, and my voice sounded too loud on the sidewalk. Her grip tightened on the grocery bag. "No," she whispered. "No, you left. Everyone saw. You were finally brave." I stared at her, mouth dry. "Who told you that?" I demanded. Her gaze flickered toward the mailboxes behind the glass door. "The list," she said. "What list?" She didn't answer. She hurried away, footsteps fast, leaving me standing outside my own building like a stranger. I tried the intercom. No one answered. I called my landlord. It went to voicemail. I stood there longer than I should have, watching people come and go, hoping someone would recognize me normally, without fear or confusion. No one did. Finally, a man walked out, and I slipped inside before the door closed. The lobby was quieter than I remembered, like someone had turned down the volume on the world. I hurried to the mailboxes. My name was gone. Not covered. Gone. The plaque beside my box had been replaced with a blank one, freshly screwed in. I touched it with shaking fingers. Across from the boxes, taped to the wall, was a printed sheet of paper. A list. It looked like a schedule. Names in a column. Dates beside them. Times. Neat and official. At the top, in bold letters, departures. My eyes scanned it quickly, breath shallow. I found my name halfway down. Date. Last month. Time. 9 a.m. Status. Completed. My knees went weak. I stared at the word completed until it blurred. Someone behind me cleared their throat. I turned sharply. The building superintendent stood there, keys in hand, watching me like he wasn't sure what he was looking at. "Can I help you?" He asked carefully. "It's me," I said. "You know me." "I live in 4B. His face tightened with discomfort. "4B is vacant," he said. "That's not true." He hesitated, then spoke more softly. You moved out," he said. "You gave notice. You said you were going to—" He stopped, as if the rest of the sentence felt too strange to say aloud. "To what?" I demanded. He swallowed. "To leave," he whispered. I laughed once, harsh and broken. "Leave where?" I said. "How? When?" I didn't go anywhere. The superintendent's eyes flicked to the list again, then back to me. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "If you're trying to undo it, you can't. That's not how it works." My throat tightened. "What works? What are you talking about?" He shook his head quickly. "You should go," he said, "before it notices." "It?" I repeated. But he was already walking away, disappearing down the hallway like he'd never been there at all. I forced myself upstairs. On the 4th floor, the hallway lights flickered weakly. I walked to 4B. The door was different. Not the same paint. Not the same scratches near the handle. It was a new door. And beside it, where my number plate should have been, there was only bare wood. I pressed my hand against it, trembling. I knocked once, gently, like a guest. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. My chest tightened as if I couldn't pull enough air. Then from inside I heard movement. Soft footsteps, approaching the door. My breath caught. The door opened. A man stood there, blinking in the hallway light like I'd woken him. He looked familiar, not in a clear way. More like a face you see in a dream and swear you've met before. Can I help you? He asked. I stared at him. This is my apartment, he frowned. No, he said. This is mine. My hands shook. I've lived here for years. He studied me carefully, then his expression shifted from annoyance to something else. Unease. He glanced past me down the hallway, then back at me. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. My stomach twisted. Everyone keeps saying that. He lowered his voice further. You already left, he said. I didn't, he swallowed. My mother, she has your old number, he said quietly. She told me about you. She told me what happened when you left. She said the building felt lighter afterward. What? I whispered. He hesitated, then said, She said you were on the list. She said you were one of the brave ones. My throat tightened. I don't know what list you're talking about, I said. He looked at me with something like pity. It's not just this building, he whispered. It's everywhere. He started to close the door. Wait, I said quickly. Please, just tell me, what does leaving mean? His eyes flicked to my feet. I followed his gaze, confused. Then I saw it, my shadow. It was there, stretching behind me in the hallway light. But it was wrong. It didn't match my posture. It leaned slightly to the left, even though I stood straight. And when I shifted my weight, my shadow didn't move. The man's voice was barely audible. It means you're supposed to be gone, he whispered. Then the door shut. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. My shadow snapped into place, as if nothing had happened. But I had seen it. I ran down the stairs and out of the building. Outside, the air felt colder. I walked aimlessly, trying to ground myself in reality, in the familiar routes of the city. But nothing felt familiar anymore. Street signs seemed slightly wrong. Storefronts I knew were missing. Others had appeared in their place with names that sounded like they belonged in a different city. I pulled out my phone again and searched my own name online. Nothing. No social media, no work profile, no old mentions. It was like I'd been erased. Then my phone buzzed. A call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? I said, voice shaking. A calm voice replied, the same tired tone from the voicemail. Thank you for taking the call, it said. We noticed you're still present. My skin went cold. Who is this? I demanded. We are trying to confirm your status, the voice said. You were scheduled to leave. Your departure was processed. You are currently lingering. I swallowed hard. I didn't leave, I said. I don't know what you're talking about. A pause. Then, gently. Do you remember the moment you decided? My throat tightened. Decided what? To stop waiting, the voice said. I closed my eyes. For a moment, an image flickered behind my eyelids. Myself sitting alone late at night, staring at a screen, feeling the weight of years pressing down. The sense of being stuck in a life I hadn't chosen, only drifted into. I remembered that feeling. I just didn't remember deciding anything. I didn't do anything, I whispered. You did, the voice said softly. It may not have felt like action, but it was a choice. What happens now? I asked. Another pause. If you remain, the voice said, the world will become less able to hold you. People will forget you. Places will reject you. Eventually you will become unrecorded. My chest tightened. So what? I just disappear? The voice sounded almost kind. You already did, it said. I shook my head violently, tears stinging my eyes. No, I whispered. No, I'm here. You are present, the voice agreed, but you are not placed. I swallowed. How do I fix it? A faint hum came through the line, like distant machinery. You must return to where you left, the voice said. I don't remember leaving. A pause. Then you must become lost, it replied. The call ended. I stood on the sidewalk, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dead line. My hands trembled. Become lost. The words clung to my mind like a command. That night, I didn't go home. I couldn't. It wasn't mine anymore. I wandered the city until the streets thinned and the buildings changed into quieter neighborhoods where people slept behind curtains. At some point, I realized my phone's battery was low. I didn't know where to charge it. I didn't know where I belonged. I sat on a bench under a streetlight and stared down at my shadow. It sat beside me on the pavement, long and quiet. I whispered into the cold air, "What does it mean to become lost?" My shadow didn't answer, but it shifted, just slightly. As if listening, I stood and started walking again. I let myself take wrong turns. I ignored familiar streets. I followed roads that curved away into places I didn't recognize. I walked until the city's hum softened into distant silence. Then, somewhere between one block and the next, something changed. The air thickened. The streetlights dimmed as if the power was fading. The world became quieter, like a room where someone has just stopped talking. Ahead, the street ended in fog. Not normal mist. This fog didn't drift. It stood there, pale and dense, swallowing everything beyond it. My heart pounded. I should have turned around. Instead, I stepped forward. The fog wrapped around me like cold cloth. Sound disappeared. Even my footsteps felt muted. I kept walking, though I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. And then, slowly, shapes emerged. A narrow path. Trees leaning inward. A lantern glowing warm and yellow. A building. Stone walls, wooden door. Familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. It stood exactly as it had in my dreamlike memory, though I couldn't remember ever being here. The door opened before I reached it. Warmth spilled out. I stepped inside. The room was larger than the outside suggested. A fireplace crackled, casting amber light across shelves filled with objects that didn't belong together. Clocks stopped at different times. Keys hanging from hooks, photographs with faces scratched out. Several people sat quietly around the room. They looked up as I entered. Not surprised, recognizing. A woman stood by the fire, hands wrapped around a mug. Her expression was gentle, tired. "You're late," she said. My throat tightened. "I don't know where I am," I said. She smiled faintly. "That's why you're here." I looked around the room, drawn to the shelves, to the clocks, to the feeling that this place existed outside normal rules. Then I noticed something on the table in the center. A folder. My name printed neatly on the front. My chest tightened. I stepped toward it, hands trembling. The woman watched me. "You were scheduled," she said softly. I swallowed. "Scheduled for what?" "To leave," she replied, as if it were obvious. I shook my head. I didn't. The younger man seated at the table laughed quietly, humorless. "That's what you think," he said, without looking up. I turned to him. "Do you know me?" He met my eyes, and his gaze made my skin prickle. "I know your kind," he said. "My kind?" "The ones who drift until they forget they're drifting," he said. "The ones who wait so long for life to start that eventually it starts without them." Anger flared in me, sharp and defensive. "That's not—" I began. The woman by the fire raised a hand gently, and my words died in my throat. "You don't have to defend yourself here," she said. "It doesn't change the list." "The list," I whispered. She nodded toward the paper pinned to the wall. "Departures." I stepped closer. Names, dates, times, statuses. Some were marked completed. Some were marked pending, and a few were marked missed. My name was there. Status, completed, but beside it, written in smaller text, returned. My stomach churned. "That's not possible," I whispered. "How can it be completed if I'm here?" The woman's voice was calm. "You left," she said. "Then you came back." My chest tightened. "Why would I come back?" The woman's eyes softened. "Because you weren't ready," she said. My hands clenched into fists. "No," I said. "I didn't leave. I don't remember leaving." "I would remember." The younger man leaned forward slightly. "You remember what you want to remember," he said. "You remember the part where you kept waiting. You don't remember the moment you stopped." I swallowed. "Stopped what?" The woman by the fire stepped closer. "Stopped living halfway," she said gently. The words hit me like a blow. "You made a choice," she continued, "a quiet one. A private one, but it counted." I shook my head. "I didn't do anything," the elderly man on the bench spoke softly. "Sometimes," he said, "doing nothing is the choice." I stared at them, breathing fast, trying to make sense of it. "What does leaving mean?" I demanded. The woman hesitated, then answered in a voice that seemed to fill the room. It means you stop waiting for your life to begin, she said. You step out of the version of yourself that never moves. My throat tightened. And where do I go? The woman's smile faded. Wherever you were supposed to go, she said. The place you kept postponing. I felt cold spread through my chest. And why am I back? I asked. What happened? The woman studied me carefully. You returned because you felt the world erasing you, she said. You felt the consequences of being unplaced. Yes, I whispered. She nodded. That is what happens when you refuse to arrive, she said. You become less anchored. The younger man's voice was sharp. People forget you, he said. Not out of cruelty, out of necessity. The world doesn't hold space for those who won't take it. I stared down at my hands, trembling. Can I fix it? I asked. The woman by the fire didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to a shelf and took down a small object. A ticket. A train ticket, old paper, stamped with a date. My date, she held it out to me. I took it, fingers shaking. It was real, thick, slightly worn. Where does it go? I whispered. The woman met my eyes. One way, she said softly. My chest tightened. I don't want to disappear. The woman's expression softened. You're not disappearing, she said. You're leaving the place you've been stuck. That sounds like disappearing, I whispered. The elderly woman spoke gently. It feels like disappearing to those who remain, she said, because they only knew the version of you that stayed. I stared at the ticket until the letters blurred. What's the cost? I asked, remembering the way the voice on the phone had sounded like a system balancing itself. The woman by the fire didn't smile this time. You already paid part of it, she said. What did I pay? I asked, voice tight. She gestured toward the doorway. Your place, she said. In the world you refused. My throat tightened. So I can't go back? The younger man's laugh was bitter. You can, he said. But it won't recognize you. It already started moving on. I looked down at my shadow. It stretched across the floor in the firelight. But it wasn't steady. It trembled slightly, as if uncertain where to belong. The woman followed my gaze. You're unstable, she said. Half here. Half already gone. I swallowed. So what do I do? The woman stepped closer, lowering her voice. You either complete your departure, she said, or you become something the world can't record. My chest tightened. I thought of my apartment door with a new number plate, my coworkers insisting I'd left. My name erased from the mailbox. It wasn't just confusion. It was correction. The room felt warmer, but my skin prickled with cold. I don't want to go, I whispered. The woman by the fire nodded gently, like she'd heard that before. No one wants to, she said. Not at first. Where does it take me? I asked. The woman's eyes flicked to the stopped clocks. To the day you were supposed to leave, she said. The younger man leaned forward. And to the person you were supposed to be after, he added. My heart pounded. I couldn't tell if this was mercy or punishment. I stared at the ticket. It felt heavier than paper. You said I chose, I whispered. When? How? The woman by the fire's gaze softened. It wasn't a dramatic moment, she said. There was no thunder. No sign. Her voice lowered. It was just the quiet moment you finally admitted to yourself that staying like this was its own kind of death, she said. And you decided to stop. My throat tightened. I remembered that feeling. The way the air had felt thick around me, the way my body had been heavy with years of half-choices, the way my mind had whispered, not later, now. But I didn't remember leaving. The woman placed a hand over her chest. Sometimes the mind protects you from the transition, she said. Sometimes it hides the threshold. I swallowed hard. What happens if I refuse? I asked. The woman's hand fell to her side. Then you will linger, she said. And the world will keep correcting. The younger man spoke without sympathy. And eventually it will succeed, he said. You'll walk through your city and no one will see you. You'll speak and the sound won't register. You'll exist, but not belong anywhere. My breath came shallow. That's death, I whispered. The elderly man shook his head slowly. No, he said. It's worse. Because you'll still be here to notice. Silence filled the room. The fire crackled softly. The building waited like it had all the time in the world. I looked at the door. Beyond it, fog pressed against the windows like pale hands. I looked at the people inside. They weren't afraid. They were resigned, as if they all stood where I stood and made a decision that took something from them and gave them something else. "What did you choose?" I asked the younger man. He stared at his fingers. "I chose not to leave," he said quietly. "And the world made sure I couldn't. What does that mean?" I whispered. He looked up, and his eyes were hollow. "I help," he said. "I sit at the table. I tell people what I didn't want to hear. And I watch them leave." The woman by the fire turned toward me again. "You can leave," she said. "But you must understand what leaving means." My throat tightened. "Tell me," she spoke carefully. "It means you stop trying to return to the version of your life that kept you safe," she said. "It means you step into a future you cannot rehearse." My chest hurt. "And if I fail?" I asked. The woman's expression softened. "Then you will become lost again," she said. "And the place will appear." My fingers tightened around the ticket. The paper felt warmer now, as if it were alive. "How do I do it?" I asked. The woman pointed to a door at the back of the room, one I hadn't noticed before. It was darker than the others, its frame carved with shallow lines that looked almost like writing but never formed words. "Through there," she said. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. "What's behind it?" I asked. The woman's gaze held mine. "A station," she said. "Not on any map. Not in any schedule you recognize." The younger man's voice was quiet and sharp. "And when you step onto that platform," he said, "you don't hesitate." I swallowed. "What if I do?" The woman's voice softened. "Then you return," she said. My breath caught. Return to what? To my erased life? To the city that no longer recognized me? Or to the building itself? The thought made my stomach turn. I stood with trembling legs and walked toward the back door. My shadow stretched behind me in the firelight. For a moment it looked steady, then it slipped, just slightly. As if it was already pulling away, I placed my hand on the door handle. The metal was cold. I hesitated. The younger man spoke. "Don't," he said. "Not even for a second." I forced myself to breathe. Then I opened the door. Cold air rushed out. Not wind, not weather. Cold like distance. On the other side was a long corridor, dimly lit by small lamps that looked like they'd been burning for centuries. The walls were stone. The floor was worn smooth. The corridor stretched farther than it should have. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me. The sound echoed, deep and final. I walked. The corridor felt strangely quiet, like it absorbed sound. My footsteps were soft, muffled. The air smelled faintly of iron and damp wood. As I walked, I noticed small objects set into niches in the wall. A child's shoe. A broken watch. A letter with an unopened seal. A passport. A set of house keys. All ordinary items. All things people carry when they leave. I reached out to touch one, a photograph, old and faded. It showed a person standing in front of a building. The building was the same one I'd left. The person's face had been scratched out. My stomach tightened. I kept walking. At the end of the corridor, light appeared. Not warm firelight, fluorescent, station light. The corridor opened onto a platform. A train station. But not like any station I'd ever seen. The platform was clean and empty. The air smelled like cold metal and electricity. There were no advertisements, no maps, no benches, no trash cans. Just a long stretch of concrete and a single sign hanging above it. The sign was blank. I stepped onto the platform and felt the world shift slightly, like my body had moved into a different layer of reality. The lights overhead buzzed faintly. My shadow stretched across the concrete. It looked darker here, denser. It clung to me like it was afraid. I looked down at it, heart pounding. "Stay," I whispered, without knowing why. My shadow didn't move, but it trembled. I turned my gaze down the tracks. They disappeared into darkness. No sound of trains, no announcements, just silence. Then, very softly, a voice came from behind me. "You're late." I spun around. A conductor stood on the platform a few steps away. Dark uniform, cap, hands folded. face tired like he'd seen too many people arrive with the same expression. My throat tightened. "Who are you?" I asked. The conductor's eyes flicked to the ticket in my hand. "I'm here to make sure you don't miss it again," he said. "Miss what?" I asked. The conductor's gaze remained calm. "Your departure," he replied. My chest tightened. "I didn't leave," I said again, though the words felt weaker now, like a habit rather than truth. The conductor tilted his head. "You did," he said. "You just tried to bring the part of you that stayed behind." My grip tightened around the ticket. "I don't understand." The conductor looked down the tracks. "You will," he said. "When it arrives." A faint vibration ran through the platform. Not loud, not obvious, but I felt it in my bones. The air shifted. Far down the tracks, a light appeared. A train. It approached slowly, soundless at first, then with a distant hum like a long breath. As it drew closer, I noticed there were no windows, just dark metal walls. And yet, as it passed beneath the overhead lights, I saw shapes behind the metal as if the interior was full of people pressing against it. My stomach dropped. The train slowed and stopped with a whisper. The doors opened. Cold air poured out, smelling like rain and something older. Inside the carriage, the lights were dim, and it was full of people. They stood shoulder to shoulder, silent, their faces calm, eyes unfocused like they were already somewhere else. I stared. Then I realized what was wrong. Their shadows were not beneath them. Their shadows were on the ceiling, clinging there like stains. The conductor's voice was quiet beside me. "Don't look too long," he said. I forced myself to look away. My heart hammered. "Is that where I'm going?" I whispered. The conductor nodded once. "You're going where you decided to go," he said. "When you stopped waiting?" My throat tightened. "But I don't remember deciding." The conductor's gaze softened slightly. "That's normal," he said. "Your mind clings to the version of you that stayed." I swallowed. "What happens if I get on?" The conductor's voice was careful. "You won't return as the person who refused," he said. "And the world that forgot you won't need to forget anymore." My breath caught. "And if I don't?" The conductor's eyes sharpened. "Then you'll linger," he said. "And the correction will finish." I stared at the open doors. The passengers inside didn't move. They waited, not like commuters, like offerings. My legs trembled. I stepped forward. My shadow stretched behind me. Then it pulled back. Like a hand on my ankle. I froze. I looked down. My shadow was resisting. It thickened, darkening, as if trying to root itself to the platform. The conductor's voice was quiet. "That's the part of you that wants to stay," he said. I swallowed hard. "Can it come with me?" The conductor didn't answer immediately. Then he said softly, "Not unless you let it leave too." My throat tightened. Let it leave too. It sounded like dying. I took another step toward the door. My shadow slid forward reluctantly. The passengers inside turned their heads slightly, almost in unison, not toward me, toward my shadow. Like they recognized it. My chest tightened. "You're not the first," the conductor murmured. "Most people try to bring their old self with them." I stood at the threshold. Inside the train, the air felt colder than the platform. Time felt thinner. I hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. The lights above flickered. A sound like distant static filled the air. The conductor's voice sharpened. "Don't," he said. I forced my body forward. I stepped inside. The door didn't close immediately. For a moment, I stood in the carriage among silent passengers, feeling their presence like pressure. Then I looked down. My shadow was still on the platform. It stretched across the gap between train and station, tugging away from me like a tether snapping taut. Panic surged. "No," I whispered. The shadow moved. Not like a shadow. Like a living thing? It pulled itself backward, trying to retreat across the platform. The conductor's voice came from behind me, low and urgent. "If you want to leave," he said, "you can't keep 1 foot behind." My chest tightened. I didn't know what to do. Then, from somewhere deep inside the train, a voice spoke softly. Not the conductor, not the passengers. A voice that sounded like my own, older and calmer. "You already chose," it said. I turned toward the sound. At the far end of the carriage, where the lights were dimmest, a figure stood. It looked like me. Or like the version of me from the photograph, the woman had shown confident, steady, eyes clear. He met my gaze without fear. "You're late," he said gently. "But you're here." My throat tightened. "Who are you?" He smiled faintly. "The one who left," he said. A cold wave washed through me. "That's impossible," I whispered. He shook his head. "It's exactly what's happening," he said. "You stayed behind." I went forward, and now the world can't hold both. My hands trembled. "So I'm—" "What? A copy?" I asked. He stepped closer, slow and calm. "You're the hesitation," he said. The part that kept saying later. The words hit me like a knife. I looked down at the platform again. My shadow was still there, pulling away. The doors began to close. The conductor's voice cut through the air. "Now," he said. My chest tightened. I understood with sudden clarity what the choice really was. Not whether to get on. I already had. The choice was whether to let go. Whether to stop trying to return to the life that no longer existed for me. Whether to stop dragging the weight of my old self across the threshold. I stared at my shadow. It resisted like it was afraid. I whispered, "I'm sorry, though I didn't know if I meant it to myself or to the part of me that stayed." Then I did the only thing I could do. I stepped deeper into the carriage. The tether between me and the platform stretched. My shadow pulled harder. For a moment, I felt like I was being torn in half. Then, slowly, the shadow thinned. Not disappeared. Thinned. It stretched upward, as if being lifted, and I realized it wasn't leaving the platform. It was changing. It climbed. Crawling along the edge of the doorway, slipping into the train like smoke. The door sealed shut. The train began to move. Outside the windowless walls, the platform lights slid away into darkness. I looked down. My shadow was beneath my feet again, but it wasn't the same. It was quieter, smaller, as if part of it had been left behind. The version of me at the far end of the carriage watched me, expression gentle. "You feel it," he said. I swallowed. What did I lose? He didn't answer directly. "You lost the right to pretend you didn't choose," he said softly. "You lost the comfort of uncertainty." The train hummed steadily, moving through darkness that felt like distance rather than space. The passengers around me didn't move. They stood like statues, calm, eyes unfocused. I realized with a slow dread that they weren't waiting to arrive. They were already gone. Their bodies had come along for the ride. Their attention had not. I turned back to the other me. "Where are we going?" I whispered. He smiled faintly. "To the day you were supposed to leave," he said. "And beyond." I closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I felt something shift. Not memory, not vision. A sense of motion, internal and deep, like a boat leaving shore. When I opened my eyes, the carriage felt different. Brighter, warmer. And I noticed something strange. The passengers were fewer. Some of the silent figures had vanished between one breath and the next, leaving empty space where bodies had been. The other me watched my reaction. "Some of them complete faster," he said quietly. My throat tightened. "Complete what?" He met my eyes. "Their departure," he said. The train slowed. I felt it before I heard it. A gentle deceleration, like a hand easing pressure. The hum shifted. The vibration softened. The doors at the far end of the carriage opened. Light spilled in. Not harsh station light. Daylight. Warm, ordinary daylight. The passengers turned their heads toward it, calm as sleepwalkers. The other me stepped toward the open doors. "It's your stop," he said. My heart hammered. I approached the doorway cautiously. Beyond it was a street. A familiar street. Too familiar. My apartment building stood across the road. My old building, the one that had rejected me. But now it looked normal, bright, real. People walked in and out. A dog barked. A child laughed. My chest tightened with hope so sharp it hurt. "I can go back," I whispered. The other man's expression didn't change. "You can," he said. "But you won't fit." I stared at the street. A part of me wanted to run through that door, to slam it behind me, to disappear into my old life like none of this happened. The doorframe felt like salvation. Then I looked down. My shadow stretched onto the street beyond the train. And it moved. It leaned forward, eager, like it wanted to step into the daylight. But it didn't match my posture. It angled toward the building like a compass needle pulled by a magnet. My throat tightened. The other me spoke softly. "That's not your home anymore," he said. "It's the place you refuse to leave." My chest tightened. I remembered the mask tape. Left already. I remembered the blank plaque. I remembered the list. My skin prickled. This stop wasn't home. It was the past, dressed up like home. A place that would swallow me if I tried to return. I stepped back from the open door. The daylight remained, inviting and warm. And in that warmth, I felt the most dangerous thing of all, relief. The relief of giving up. The relief of saying, fine, I'll go back to the life I know, even if it's not mine, even if I have to squeeze myself into it like a too small coat. The other man's voice sharpened slightly. "That feeling is how people miss their departure," he said. I swallowed hard and forced my gaze away from the street. "What happens if I don't get off?" I asked. The other man's expression softened. "Then you keep moving," he said. "And the world stops correcting you." The daylight began to fade as the door started to close. For a moment, the street looked almost sad, like a memory being sealed away. Then the door shut. The train moved again. I exhaled shakily. The other me watched me with something like approval. "You're learning," he said. My throat tightened. "I don't feel like I'm learning. I feel like I'm losing things." He nodded. "You are," he said. "But you're losing the right things," the train hummed on. Time passed in strange waves. Sometimes I felt minutes, sometimes hours. The carriage changed subtly. The lights warmed. The air smelled less like cold metal and more like rain on pavement. The passengers thinned. One by one, silent figures vanished, leaving empty space. Each time I noticed a faint shift in my own weight, as if something inside me had loosened. My shadow beneath me looked more natural now, but still quieter, still smaller. I turned to the other me. "What happens to you?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "I'm already where I needed to be," he said. "I'm just making sure you catch up." My chest tightened. "So you're not coming with me?" He didn't answer directly. "When you arrive," he said, "there won't be two of us anymore." Cold spread through my chest. "That sounds like it's not death," he said gently. "It's integration." The word felt clinical, like something from a manual. And yet, deep down, it felt true. I remembered how it felt to be split, the part of me that waited and the part of me that wanted to move. I didn't want to disappear, but I didn't want to keep drifting either. The train slowed again. This time, the doors opened onto a place I didn't recognize. A quiet neighborhood street under overcast skies. Wet asphalt, bare trees, a small cafe on the corner. A woman stood outside holding a cup, looking down the street as if waiting for someone. When she glanced up and met my eyes, my breath caught. I recognized her, not from my life. From my almost life. From the photograph the woman by the fire had shown me in the other place. The version of me who had smiled confidently in an office. The woman looked older now, tired, but her eyes were clear. She stared at the open train doors, then at me, and her face tightened with shock. My chest hammered. I stepped closer, drawn by instinct. The other man's hand touched my arm gently. "She can't see you the way you want," he whispered. "What do you mean?" I asked. "She can see what you could have been," he replied. "And it will hurt her." I stared at the woman on the street. She took a slow step closer, eyes wide. Then she whispered, "No." My stomach dropped. She could see me. Or something of me. She raised her hand slightly, as if reaching toward a memory. The other man's voice was firm now. "Don't get off," he said. I swallowed hard. "But she's not your anchor," he said. "She's your temptation." The word hit me like a slap. The woman outside stepped closer to the open door, her face pale. She spoke again, louder. "You left," she said, voice shaking. "You left and you never came back." My throat tightened. "I didn't mean to." I started forgetting myself. The other man's gaze snapped to me, sharp, but the words had already left my mouth. The woman outside froze. Then her expression twisted into something that looked like grief and anger at once. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't do this. Don't come back now." My chest tightened painfully. The doors began to close. I took a half step forward, desperate. The other me grabbed my wrist firmly. "Stop," he hissed. The woman outside slammed her hand against the closing door. Her palm left a smear of moisture on the glass. Then, for a moment, she looked directly at my shadow. Not at me, at my shadow. Her eyes widened. She stumbled backward as if she'd seen something impossible. Then she mouthed 2 words. "Too late." The doors sealed shut. The train moved. I stood trembling, tears burning my eyes. "What was that?" I whispered. The other me released my wrist slowly. "That was the life you didn't choose," he said quietly. My throat tightened. "And now," he added, "you don't get to borrow it." I sank onto the floor, breathing fast. My shadow pooled beneath me, small and dark. For a moment, it felt like it was holding me. The train hummed on. I don't know how long we traveled. Time stopped behaving. But eventually the vibration shifted again. The lights dimmed. The air grew colder. The carriage felt emptier than ever. Only a few passengers remained now, spaced far apart, faces calm, eyes unfocused. The other me stood near the doors at the far end, watching the darkness ahead. When he turned back to me, his expression was serious. "This is it," he said softly. My chest tightened. "My stop?" He nodded. "The day you were supposed to leave," he said. "The real one." The train slowed. The doors opened. Cold air rushed in. I stepped toward the opening. Beyond, there was not a street. Not a city. It was a room. My old apartment. Dimly lit by the glow of a laptop screen, I stared, frozen. Inside the room, I saw myself. The old me. Sitting at the desk, shoulders slumped, face pale, eyes fixed on the screen like it was the only thing holding him together. My throat tightened. I recognized the moment instantly. The moment I'd nearly admitted what I couldn't admit out loud. The moment everything had felt heavy, suffocating. The moment I had whispered to myself, not later, now. The other me stood beside me, voice low. "This is where you left," he said. I swallowed hard. "I remember this," I whispered. The other me nodded. "You decided," he said. "And then you tried to pretend you didn't." My chest tightened. The old me on the chair leaned forward and typed something into the laptop. I couldn't see the screen, but I saw the shape of the words in his posture, a resignation becoming commitment. Then the old me stood up. He walked toward the front door of the apartment. He paused with his hand on the handle. The other me's voice was quiet in my ear. "This is where you hesitated," he said. "This is where you split." My throat tightened. I watched the old me's hand tremble. He took a breath. Then he opened the door. Fog spilled in. Not normal fog, the same thick, pale fog that didn't move. The fog swallowed the hallway beyond. The old me stepped forward. And vanished. I stood frozen at the train doorway, breath shallow. "I did leave," I whispered. The other me nodded. "You left," he said. "And you came back." My chest tightened. "Why did I come back?" The other me looked down at my shadow. "Because you were afraid of being unrecognizable," he said. "You were afraid of losing your old life completely." My throat tightened. "And now?" I whispered. The other me's gaze held mine. "Now you finish," he said. The train doors began to close slowly, not forcing me out, not pulling me in, waiting. I stared into my apartment, into the moment that had split me. I saw the empty chair by the desk. The laptop still glowing, the room waiting like a paused breath. The other me stepped closer. "If you want to stop being corrected," he said softly, "you step through." My chest tightened. "What happens to the me in that room?" I whispered. The other me's expression softened. "He becomes you," he said. Without the split, my throat tightened. "And what happens to you?" I asked, voice shaking. The other me smiled faintly. "You stop lingering," he said. "You stop being half." My hands trembled. I looked down at my shadow. It stretched toward the apartment like it wanted to go home. Not to the building, to the threshold, to the moment. I took a breath. Then I stepped forward. I crossed the gap between train and room. The moment I entered the apartment, the air changed, warmer, heavier. real. The glow of the laptop filled my vision. I turned. The train was still there for a heartbeat, doors open, light buzzing overhead. The other me stood on the carriage floor. He met my eyes. This time, his expression wasn't calm. It was relieved. "Don't look back," he whispered. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. But I understood something then, clear as a bell. Questions were part of how I stayed, how I postponed, how I kept myself in motion without direction, so I didn't ask. I turned away. Behind me, the train doors closed with a soft hiss. The hum of its engine faded like a breath exhaled. I stood in the apartment, alone. Then slowly I looked down. My shadow lay beneath my feet, normal, matching my posture perfectly. Steady, I exhaled shakily. The laptop screen glowed. On it was a blank document titled, "Departure." I stared at the cursor, blinking patiently, waiting for words. My hands trembled. I sat in the chair, the same chair I'd sat in during the moment. The moment I had decided, my chest tightened. I could feel how close I had been to staying forever, to living half a life and calling it safety. I placed my fingers on the keyboard, then I typed. Not a resignation letter, not a goodbye, a plan, a commitment. A sentence that did not include the word later. As I typed, the room felt heavier, but not in a suffocating way, in a grounded way. Like weight returning to a body that had been floating too long. When I finished, I saved the document. I looked at the time. It was Monday, 9 a.m. exactly. The day and time I had been scheduled to leave. My chest tightened with a strange emotion, something like grief for the version of me that had drifted, and something like gratitude for the version that finally stepped through. I stood up and walked to the front door. My hand rested on the handle. I hesitated. Just for a heartbeat, not out of fear, out of respect. Because I understood now what a threshold was. A place where you decide whether you become the person who moves forward or the person the world slowly forgets. I opened the door. The hallway was normal, no fog, no silence, no list. Just a worn carpet and distant voices from other apartments. I stepped out. And for the first time in a long time, the world didn't feel like it was holding its breath around me. It felt like it was finally letting me in. As I walked down the stairs and out into the day, the sunlight hit the sidewalk, bright and ordinary. I glanced down. My shadow stretched beside me, quiet and loyal. Then, just for a moment, I felt it pull like a gentle reminder, not a warning, a promise, that if I ever try to live half a life again, the world will not wait forever. And somewhere, in a place that exists only when you're lost, a list will be updated. A departure will be scheduled. And the day I'm supposed to leave will come again.